Good afternoon, Suidlanders. How are you? We hope that you are very, very well this Friday, the 20th of January 2023. And this is Suidlanders Week in Review. It's been a spectacular week, hasn't it? Those of you who've watched this before will know that we work from Saturday to Friday. So at the end of the week, I do this summing up, and therefore we start counting again from the next day, which is Saturday. What have I got for you? I've got some pretty general stuff that's maybe not so specific to a particular day. Let's start with that, and then we'll see what we can find on the Saturday. During the course of this week, the Russians took the towns of Solidar and Bakhmut. There are still some reports suggesting that the taking of Bakhmut is not complete, or that it's exaggerated, but the leading observers, guys who've proven themselves to be more accurate than anybody else concerning this conflict over the course of the past 9 months, seem to be of the consensus that if Bakhmut has not been entirely taken in this past week, it is as near as damn it. Solidar was taken, nobody's really sure. There were claims, then there were counterclaims, then some guys of the Russian forces produced a video, and then which was quite clearly showed that they were holding the center of Solidar, and then somebody else complained that they shouldn't have put the video out. So it's all a bit murky, but what do we know? We know for sure that Solidar is taken, and we know for sure that Bakhmut is as good as taken. And why do we include this in the week in review? Because we don't always talk about the Russian war. There's just too much. It's not worth it. It's because for weeks the Western media has been saying that the Russians are being pushed back, the Russians are suffering, the Russians have got no food, they've got no fuel, they've got no winter clothing, they're not making any progress, the defense is too good, blah, blah, blah. And clearly that turned out to be hopelessly untrue. Another very interesting thing, and this is really fascinating for those of you who are interested in going down a level or two into this stuff. Do you remember us talking about Alexei Arestovich, the principal advisor to the to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky? Do you recall us saying that he is kind of not the power behind the throne, but perhaps the brains of the operation? Do you recall us talking about the video? And you can find this very, very easy. Alexei, Alexey, Arestovich, Arestovich, being interviewed in 2019. We spoke about this video. Damning. In which he reveals what the course of events will be apropos Russia, Ukraine, Donbass, etc. And he sketches a scenario. I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's a long time since I watched it. He talks about drawing the Russians into a full-on conflict, obliging them to invade Ukraine so that Ukraine could then call upon the assistance of NATO and the Americans, and through that create a full-on war. This was the specific intention. We've been saying this now for 9, 10 months, 11 months. It's almost the 24th of January, and the invasion took place on the 24th of February, drawing them into a full-scale war, the Russians and the Europeans and Americans, NATO. And then I believe that he ended with something like wiping out Russia or totally defeating Russia, the words to that effect. So they had very clear intentions to destroy as much as possible of Russia, which is the allegation that the Russians are making. They're saying this is part of a long plan to destroy Russia. So those have been... Oh, the point was, I beg your pardon, that Alexei Arestovich resigned over nobody knows really what. He said that he was sorry for making an error, an erroneous statement about a missile that was allegedly shot down and then landed and killed some people, a Russian missile, that he'd said the wrong thing, so he was falling on his sword. But nobody takes that explanation for his resignation seriously at all. So who knows? What else? Okay, on Saturday there was the re-emergence of a video from September or November of last year. I have found two sources that appear to allude to the video. And I didn't do an hour and a half's research tracking down the precise one, but it certainly seems to come from a meeting of the South Africa UK Business Roundtable seminar. The president giving the keynote speech, in which he talks in quite a cocksure manner about how we managed to get load shedding under control. This is from September or November of last year, where he brags about their initiatives and how they worked and what they did, and his demeanor, this cocksure demeanor that I've mentioned, suggests we know what we're doing, don't mess with us. You know, it's very stentorian is the correct word. I'm the expert, don't you tell me anything. We are the African National Congress. We solve problems because we are competent and clever. You know, that's the sort of the thing, not to overdo the acting. And of course, I mean, an irony of ironies. This Mampara talking with some arrogance, with some almost dismissiveness, with some aloofness down to people. They couldn't even keep up the act for 3 months or 2 months. Then on Sunday morning, K.W. Miller, the American guy who works for CRO something, based in Dubai, who's been making videos about South Africa's power crisis, recorded a hard-hitting video on the terminal collapse of Eskom and of South Africa, and how much trouble we're in, and so on and so forth. South Africa is ready to implode, is what the video was entitled. And I'm going to tell you a comment that I passed very briefly. Oh, it's actually not that brief, but let's see what we can do. Many of you have already seen this video. This is now on WhatsApp. I just want to comment on two things. Firstly, I'd like for Saitlanders to be able to take credit where it is due, and to remind you that as long ago as 2018, Saitlanders and Saitlanders alone were the only people willing to say what this guy is saying about Eskom. 5 years ago, when we spent scores of hours researching our facts prior to making videos on the topic, it was clearly apparent from our research that the government and Eskom were lying, and that even Ted Blom and Chris Yelland were at that time being politically correct by using terms that were not as drastic as the mathematics. We were looking at the mathematics. 1 and 1 equals 2. And Chris Yelland and Ted Blom were saying things like, I'm going to kind of make it up now, 1.5, gee, it's too bad for words. Golly gee, if only it wasn't 1.5. 1.5 is disgraceful. 1.5 is disgusting. You see what I'm saying? They were downplaying it. They were being half honest, but they weren't willing to go the whole 9 yards like Saitlanders was and say this problem is terminal. What else did we say? Is there anything worth mentioning? I will briefly touch on the fact that some people have said that, have done some research on K.W. Miller and have revealed that he perhaps has a sketchy past. But I put it to you that the attacks that have been made upon me, bold claims, Simon was seen here doing that, Simon stole money, Simon is a communist, Simon is a lover of black women. These lies are easy to make up. And at least one of the primary sources of the these claims against his reputation is an entity called Right Wing Watch, whose sole purpose in life is to create a database. You can look this up, Right Wing Watch. If you Google it, you'll find it in no seconds flat. Whose sole raison d'être, the French expression for reason for existing that is commonly used in English, is to create a database, as it were, for liberals to know who are the bad right-wingers or who are the bad conservatives. And they exaggerate absolutely everything. A middle-of-the-road person who doesn't believe in LGBTQ, whatever, well, he's ultra-conservative. Conservative people become right-wingers. Ultra-conservative people become neo-Nazis or Nazis in their expression of the thing. So I would urge you not to take the attacks on this guy's personality and his past and what have you too seriously, which is not to say that he is as pure as the driven snow. I don't know well enough to have a strong opinion one way or the other. I would just be very careful about believing any insult that comes from Right Wing Watch. Righty-ho, on Monday, Davos began. What did we say about Davos? We had something to say. Perhaps I should leave that for a second and come back to it, because I don't have that tab open, so rather than struggling, I'll work my way through one or two other things, close them, and I'll be that much closer to that tab. What have we got here? Lungile Mashele, a woman, new kid on the block, energy analyst, what have you, has now had her second prominent interview. For all that I know, she may have conducted 50 already in her career, and in her opinion, she might have had 20 that were, and I'm being a terrible person by saying she's only had 2 meaningful interviews. I'm talking about meaningful to us, where an interview, an event in the world, a report, an article, a video is powerful enough and meaningful enough for us to say, right, this is something. Not any run-of-the-mill interview on Wednesday night concerning one power station having a problem. She says, what does she say? She reiterated what she said in the interview, the previous one, early December of last year, reiterated that stage 8 is coming. I beg your pardon. Stage 8 is coming, make no mistake, and that we stand at least a 50% chance of having stage 10 and 14 hours a day of blackouts. Now, why are we taking Lungi Le Mashele seriously? Because, as I pointed out to you when we covered her first interview, she seems to have some sort of insight. Does that mean she knows everything and everybody else who disagrees with her is wrong? No, not at all. But although she's a new kid on the block, she seems to, I would put it to you that she's got very good contacts in Eskom. And that is what enables her to speak the way that she does. In the first interview, turned out to be spot on. She told us about stage 6 to the end of the year. She told us about stage 8 at the beginning of the year, and we were in what is tantamount to stage 8 because we were having 12 hours a day of blackouts. And I have been through the mathematics of this thing with you before. You can go and verify it on there is a website devoted to exactly this, how you calculate, according to Eskom's formula, how many hours blackouts you should have in whichsoever stage. Okay, what else? Boom, 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 boom. We said we were going to get back to Davos. On Monday, Marula Media reported a verbruikersopstand broei. I put it to you that it's a storm in a teacup. I do not believe for 1 minute that is worth taking seriously. We then had I'm going to address about 4 interrelated events. Aubrey Masango on 702 got stuck in on the subject of Eskom. If you haven't seen that, search it, video, Aubrey Masango. Very easy. Aubrey Masango, 702 Eskom. You'll find the video. Man, I have seldom, if ever, heard any South African speak so candidly in public, given the ever-present fear of politically correct condemnation about the truths of the African National Congress, in this case as it pertains to Eskom. We had Ted Blom in a long interview on Jacaranda FM giving a huge expose of the severity of the problems at Eskom. We had the boere, veral die Noord-Kaapse besproeiingsboere, coming out and talking about how they were being broken, absolutely broken by these power cuts, the harm that it was doing. It was affecting their ability to plant and to water and to harvest and to keep stuff cold. Then we saw that day or the next day the video of the chickens that had died in the shed. Everybody has seen that video. Tragic, heartrending, huge losses. 50,000 chickens, if I remember correctly, all lying dead there. And I spoke to a lady on Monday, a farmer from Uppington. It's a family farm. Her husband is now the farmer, but it's a family farm, so she's, I suppose, the owner, you could say. Farmed all her life, father, etc. And she was telling me, a very lovely lady, she said to me, die pryse is klaar in hulle glory in, maar nou Simon, gaan jy sien wat word van die pryse. Hulle gaan regtig in hulle glory inskiet. So, why do I say that the verbruikersopstand thing in Marula Media is nonsense? Well, let me add, I think it was Tuesday, the following day, that the DA came out and said that they're going to march on January the 25th to Luthuli House, and they're going to really be really upset about the Eskom crisis. And in response to that, I commented, firstly, 250,000 people are never, meaningful, or 100,000, even 50,000 people, are never going to descend on the CBD of Johannesburg. You can just forget about it. But even if they did, it would be like water off a duck's back for the African National Congress. If they knew that 30 million people were crying out, the African National Congress, and in a sense, rightly, not morally rightly, not how the Bible and our parents have taught us to live rightly, but in the sense that if you're committed to a crime, you might as well be all in. And the cries of even 30 million people are not as powerful to the criminal syndicates in the African National Congress that occupy the apex of the hierarchy of wrongdoers involved in the Eskom crisis. Hearing somebody stamp their feet and what have you, and particularly a few hundred well-heeled ladies of Killarney or Lower Houghton, that will make nil impression upon the people in Luthuli House. And similarly, I say to you that Marula Media thinks there's going to be a rebellion. What are you talking about? Well, who's going to do what? Assuming that I'm correct about the events at Luthuli House on the 25th of January. Who's going to do what? Farmers. God bless them today. They drove their tractors here and there in protest. At least they're doing something, because I'm sorry to say it, that historically the farmers of South Africa have been guilty of laxity or complacency or laissez-faire. With all due respect and not disrespect, you know, Suidlanders has possibly close to, if I consider Alex Jones and Lawrence Southern, the nearly 350,000 views of our speech in the European Parliament, 240,000, 230,000 on one channel alone. We have a good 50 million views, if not 100 million, of occasions where we have stood up for the farmers of South Africa, and all of the farmers who know me know that I love them as farmers. Not everybody's my friend, but if you're a farmer, but the truth of the matter is that on many occasions, the farmers of South Africa have been only too happy for other people to march for them while they stayed on the farm. I understand you've got to look after your everybody understands that. There's nobody who doesn't understand. All we're saying is that it is good that the farmers are coming out in force in their tractors and harvesters and planters and diggers and what have you to stand up. But is it going to make an impression upon the African National Congress's conscience? Not roughly, not approximately, not more or less, precisely nil. It will make no difference whatsoever, because, to give you an example, one criminal syndicate at Eskom stole, a criminal syndicate of 54 people, stole over 8 billion rand. You think a combine harvester in what is this place's name? Carcamas? Come on, man. This is the new South Africa. Be realistic. We have to come up with something else. Economists reported in News 24 on Tuesday say that there is a 45% chance of recession in South Africa. I'm not going to dwell on this subject. We've been going for 24 minutes already. Let it suffice to say the following. If they say that there's a 45% chance of a recession in South Africa in 2023, you should know by now, from years of watching the television and what, that means that they believe that there's a 75, 85 or 90% chance. So I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that we are in for a rocky year financially. The world's first brain implant, chip implant for depression, was reported on Tuesday, and that is terribly ominous. Depression, then anxiety, then you know it'll never end. Oh, on Tuesday we heard the tragic story of Elsa Eckhart from Delareyville, who wanted to bury her mother like a queen. And in the church, as she put it, all you could see... Oh. You see, that started by itself. I hate that advertisement. Not dislike. I hate it. Let's see if we can't just put anything else on but that rubbish. A gay man trying to convince me to buy through staring at his feet and listening to his camp to buy those sandals. Elsa Eckhart, Delareyville, she wanted to bury her mom. Bob brought the coffin into the church, and the place, she said, all you could see was brommers, flies, because her mom's body was rotten, because Bob didn't have electricity, and they did have a generator, but no diesel ash. So that is one of the practical effects of what we are seeing in the world around us in South Africa. We've touched on the DA thing. Davos. We said we were going to talk about Davos. What do we know about Davos? It is the annual World Economic Forum meeting in the mountain town of Davos in Switzerland. Over 1,000 planes, private planes, flown largely by unvaccinated pilots. Yes, there was a video about this. We posted it on Saitlander's WhatsApp groups, Saitlander's leadership WhatsApp groups, interviewing a guy from a pilot association, if that's the correct word, where he describes by name how pilots associations, leaders and presidents and CEOs and what have you, have revealed to him how they're getting calls for unvaccinated pilots to fly planes into Davos. So Davos began on Monday. That's the 16th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, ended today. And just before I started doing this video, I was watching the one of the two closing speeches, the main afternoon closing speeches. It's not looking good, what they're saying. But we're going to do other videos about that. British American Tobacco has had to retrench about 30% of its staff and is now going to retrench, and that 30% is about 500 positions. So they had something like 1,500 staff, roughly. They now have to cut another 200 jobs. So that will be 700 of about 1,500 since 2020 because of illegal tobacco sales. Illegal tobacco sales, the illicit market, now accounts for 70% of South Africa's total cigarette market. And you can bet your bottom dollar that the apex of the echelons of the criminals involved there are senior members of the African National Congress. There are no two ways about it. That's how it works. We've heard reports of a chicken crisis in South Africa because of what we described earlier, the chickens dying. And apparently, just in the past few weeks, something like 10 million chickens have been culled, and we are hearing that very shortly, if it hasn't begun already, there will be a glut of chickens on the market in South Africa, and that will lead to greatly reduced prices. At least that cloud has a silver lining. On Wednesday, Saudi Arabia, this actually comes from Davos, at Davos, I beg your pardon, on the Tuesday, it was reported on the Wednesday by Bloomberg. The Saudi Arabian delegation at Davos revealed that they were willing to consider oil trades not denominated or settled in dollars. Ladies and gentlemen, if that goes ahead, it will be the death of the petrodollar, which is already standing only on one leg, following what China and Russia and Iran have done over the past year during the Ukraine conflict to combat the sanctions, to start trading across the world in non-dollar denominated oil transactions. And if the petrodollar goes, guys, it will mean big trouble for the US economy, and it will cause a currency crisis in almost every single currency in the world, because every currency in the world is pegged to the US dollar as a direct consequence of the Bretton Woods agreements concluded in 1944 between initially the 44 Allied nations, later became 49, I believe, in the Hotel Washington, in the New Hampshire town of Bretton Woods, in the United States of America. It will capsize the world. Thursday, Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand, resigned. Yay, the witch is gone. What great news that was. The 7th of February will be her last working day. Thursday, South Africa's first black Vryheidsfront councillor was inaugurated in Bella Bella, and many people had a lot to say about that. I don't know how you feel on the matter, one way or the other, but I report to you that it was a big thing at the time. Many people had strong feelings about how well a black man could represent a party that was always intended to represent the interests of the Afrikaner in this country, in which he is so outnumbered demographically. Personally, I really genuinely don't have a strong opinion one way or the other, because I believe that the argument is far more subtle than it's being reduced, being made. Who knows? I really don't care enough. I don't care enough to interrogate it so deeply that I understand it well. I'd rather give my time to understanding other things. That's just me. What else, guys? What else? I think that's about it. Friday today has been rather quiet. I don't think that there's much that I can share with you. Yeah, that's about it, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, please like, share, subscribe. We need the support. We want the support. Be with us. Oh, here's a terrific one. Just quickly. In Texas, the number of abortions has reduced by 99% since the overturning last year of the famous Roe versus Wade Supreme Court decision permitting abortions in the USA in 1971 or 72. So for that 50-year period, there was that law. It was overturned last year, and by the grace of God Almighty, the states are no longer compelled to permit abortions. The states, the 50 individual states that make up the United States of America, are allowed to decide for themselves. Texas is one of those that said, well, we won't have abortions, free abortions for anybody, anytime, whatever anymore. And that has led to a 99% decrease in abortions. Praise the Lord God. Is that not wonderful, wonderful news with which to end this week of Friday, the 20th of January 2023. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye, and God bless all of you.